You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel, 5779, 2019. This week's Parsha in Chutz La'aretz is Parsha's Balak, and I'd like to share with you a thought that I've been thinking about. Whenever I bring to you guys a Parsha Podcast, so it usually reflects the thing that I'm thinking about this week, the thing that I feel like I've learned, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has taught me this week. And there's really an amazing lesson in our Parsha, in Parsha's Balak, which I feel like, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching this lesson all the time, but it's especially true for me this week. And, we read the Parsha of Bilaam, and as we read the Parsha, so it seems like, on the surface, Bilaam is a person who's a big tzaddik. He's a very good person. I mean, every time these people come and they say, we'd like you to curse Am Yisrael, we'd like you to speak negatively of the Jewish people, we want you to curse out our enemies. So Bilaam says, look, I can't do anything. I can't really do anything unless HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands me to do so. And as the story continues, as he goes on through the story, as we continue to read the story, so we see that indeed that's the case. He goes on, and what does he say? He doesn't say any curses. All he says is blessings. All he says is brachas. Right? How awesome are the tents of Jacob? The mishkanais, the sanctuaries of the people of Israel. Unbelievable thing that he says. And he continues to go on and say the blessings of the Jewish people and how great the Jewish people are. And it's unbelievable. On the surface, it seems like he's amazing. Right? But our chazal, our sages teach us that he was not amazing at all. In fact, he was a great rasha. He was, in fact, someone who is very evil. Now, how do they see that? How do they get that? Where does that come out in the Psukim? Over and over and over again, he says, I can't say anything on my own. I can't say anything new. I can only say whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to say. That's what he keeps saying to Balak. Balak hired him to curse the Jewish people. And Bilaam keeps blessing them, and Balak keeps saying, what are you doing? I hired you to curse them, and all you're doing is blessing them. So what is the idea? What is the concept? How did they see that? How did our chazal, how were they able to recognize that was indeed true? And I think that there's another question that we can ask as we read the Parsha of Bilaam, and it's really difficult to understand. It's very, very difficult to understand. We see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, Hashem says to him, who are these people that are with you? And he says, these are the messengers of Balak, the king of Moab. And they want me to come to curse the Jewish people. And Hashem says to him, you can't curse them. Now, Hashem says, each time it seems like HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him, first says, don't do it, then Bilaam ends up doing it. Bilaam ends up going with them. Hashem, and then the donkey stops. The Malach stops him. The angel stands in his path, and he doesn't see him at first. And the donkey ends up speaking to him, which is a crazy miracle, an unbelievable miracle. But nothing seems to really faze him. Should I go back? Oh, it's okay. You can keep going. What is this back and forth? Does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want him to go, or does HaKadosh Baruch Hu not want him to go? What's the idea? What's the concept? And so, the idea here is, our chazal teach us, our sages teach us, that the concept that's being given over here, the concept that we are to learn here, the idea, the amazing deep idea that's going on here, is that Bilaam HaRasha was somebody who wanted to do evil. It's not explicit. It's very interesting. It's very beautiful. It's not clear or explicit at the time that Bilaam is involved in his nefarious intents. In his mind, you can figure out what he wants to do, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving him a choice. You can go this way or you can go that way. Hashem is saying, you can't curse the Jewish people, but if you want to go, you can go. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is clearly giving him a free choice, the free will to be able to do whatever he decides to do. But still, as Bilaam keeps saying, because he knows it obviously from previous experience, and as indeed comes out, even when a person chooses, he has ill intent, he has nefarious intent, when he chooses to go in the wrong path, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give him signs. Hashem will try to stop him, so to speak. Hashem will do the things for him to realize on his own that it's something that he has to do, that he shouldn't really be doing that thing, that he needs to be stopping, right? But it's something that Kodesh Baruch Hu shows us and doesn't necessarily not necessarily. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not force us to do what's right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu still leaves it open, leaves the possibility for free will. But in the end, it's always true that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, His will is what's going to be done in the end. I remember hearing from Rosh Hashiva numerous times about his own father, Rabbi Per's father. His father was Rav Menachem Mendel Per, who was a Rav in a place called South Ozone Park in Queens. And at the end of his life, Rav Per's father, Rosh Hashiva's father, he would always be asking a certain question. Because his entire life he had spent being the Rav of a shul, of a synagogue, and the synagogue was people who were, not so religious, or kind of headed out of religion. And there were many people that he did indeed save. There were many children that ended up raising Jewish families from families, ended up having children who were religious because of Rabbi Menachem Per. But, perhaps he could have thought in his mind, perhaps he could have done something bigger, something greater, have become a greater person, or done something that would have had more of an effect in the world. So at the end of his life, he was asking the question. It says in the pasuk, "Atzas Hashem, Rabbeis machshavos belevish, v'atzas Hashem hisakun." There are many thoughts in a person's mind. There are many ideas that a person has, but it's the idea of Hashem that comes out in the end. Now the question is, if I'm trying to do Hashem's will, I have many different thoughts. Does that mean that I chose the right thing in the end? Does that mean that I chose to do the right thing? Is that indeed true? It's not clear. It's not barur. It says, there are many thoughts in a person's mind. The idea of Hashem comes out in the end. Does that mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns things in such a way that what He wants comes out in the end, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I did what was right for me, or I did what was best for me? It's not clear. And he was trying to understand, did he make the right choices? And each one of us faces that issue. As we try to make our choices in life, are we doing what's right? Are we doing what HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wants? And the answer, I believe, to that question is within our Parsha. We need to look at our motivations. We need to look at, why are we doing this? Why are we going there? Why is Bilaam, if Bilaam would have had a moment of self-examination, moment of self-realization, and thought about for a moment, what is motivating him? Why is he going there? Does he want to curse them? Does he want to bless them? He knows that it's going to be whatever Hashem wants in the end. But what is motivating him? What's the point? Rosh Hashiva tells another story about his father, that at some point his father was considering becoming the Rav, the rabbi of a from congregation, an upstanding, maybe a yeshivish congregation. I don't know exactly what it was. And so while he was considering that, he had a discussion with his young son, who was my Rosh Hashiva at the time. My Rosh Hashiva was a young boy, and my Rosh Hashiva said to him, "Is it you're ready to move on to the next shul? Is that because you already were makarev all of the people in this shul? Everyone is already from, like, you've completed your job here, that you're ready to move on to the next shul?" This is a little kid asking the question, and I don't know if Rabbi Per Sr. answered the question, but he stayed in that job. And part of the reason that he stayed in that job is because he realized that this is where he's supposed to be. Sometimes we hear a message from our children, and we recognize that it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaking through that child. The idea that we see is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, of course, what He wants in the end is what's going to be. But the question is, what are we doing along the way? Because we are created. Our reality is a result of the way that we think about the situation. As we walk through it, it's not always where we're getting to. It's how we got there. It's so significant. It's not many times in the secular world, so we talk about the ends justifying the means. But in Jewish thought, in Yiddishkeit, so the path to get to the ends is equally as important, if not more important, than the ends themselves, because how we get there determines who we are. We become whatever we do. So it really does matter how we're getting there. So that's an amazing, important point that we see from this idea, is that the motivation is so essential and so important, and a person always needs to be examining his motivations. What is it that's that's causing me to go? What is my goal? With Bilaam, the reason that it was such a negative thing, with Bilaam, it was such a terrible thing that he did. He was such a rasha, not because of what he did, not because of the result. There was indeed a negative result, which chazal say he ended up giving advice that they should cause the Jewish people to sin, and indeed there was a tremendous negative result. But that is not per se the point. The point is what made him to be a rasha. Chazal saw in him that he kept going towards the possibility of giving a curse to the Jewish people. He didn't need or have any interest in giving blessings to the Jewish people. That was not why he went. He could have just stayed home, right? That was not why he went. He only went for one reason, and that was in order to curse the Jewish people. His intent was to curse them. He didn't succeed. As he said, he couldn't do anything unless HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed him to do it. He wasn't able to. But the idea is that our motivations are so important. Where we're headed is so important. And ultimately, in the end all, what is it that is the result of all of our actions? The result is dependent on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But for us, the result of our actions is all of the ways that we got there. Our intent along the way. Not necessarily the results. Now, what does it mean to me, or why is this idea something that for me is inspiring, and I feel like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking about this, so to speak. I feel like this is the thing that's in my life right now that's going on, and the answer to that is that, there are so many times that a person thinks this is going to be the thing that's going to cause me success. This is the thing that's going to be that which brings me money, and especially today in our society, even within frum society. There's a very big focus on Hishtadlus, a very big focus on what can I do to make money? How can I accomplish this? And our magazines are filled with advice of people who are successful and different things that people have done in order to succeed, and different things that people have done in order to make money. Hishtadlus. So much talk about efforts, so many things that we can do, so to speak. And I've been, Baruch Hashem, involved in music for many, many years. Since I was a little kid, over 30 years I've been involved in music, and I've been creating albums for 18 years now. I'm working on, I think, album number 19 here is about to come out, B'ezrat Hashem, next week, this coming week. And everywhere I go, people recognize me. It's a nice thing. It's a nice thing to be recognized and to be appreciated for the work that a person does. And as everybody knows about the music industry, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to make money. This is especially a unique challenge that I have because I live in Eretz Yisrael, and much of my audience, I'm singing in English, but I'm also singing in Hebrew, but much of my audience is in the States. I go into America every once in a while. I was there for Pesach. I was there Purim time. I was there before. I've been there a lot of times this year already. And, a person puts in so much efforts, and it seems like this is perhaps where it's going to come from. This is where the money is going to come from. And you never know. You never know which efforts are going to produce the results that you're seeking. You want to pay your mortgage. You want to provide for your family. Every single person has that obligation. And you never know where it's going to come from. And atzas Hashem hisakum. A person thinks that this is what's going to do it. I'm going to do this PR. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to appear in this show. And if I do this show, everyone's going to want me. And all of the different things that a person thinks. And it doesn't have to just be I'm just talking about my own experience, but every person has their own experience and the things that they do. And our society says if you do X, you will have success. And it's seeped into our world, into the yeshiva world. And I think that it's so important to consider and think about the fact that that's not it. That's not it at all. And being so involved in Hishtadlus, we've been talking already for months and months about the idea of bitachon, of trusting HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of having full belief that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who is doing it. So we spoke about the idea of bitachon b'li Hishtadlus, without doing any Hishtadlus, which is a tremendously high level, which I know people who do live that way, but for most of us, that's not the level that we're on. So, but even when we do Hishtadlus, it's something that's so important. The Alter of Navardik talks about it. He references the Shida of the Chavis Halavavis, which is that a person does need to do Hishtadlus, does need to put in efforts. But he says, even according to the Chavis Halavavis, when we put in efforts, when we are involved in doing something for our parnasa, for our livelihood, we still have to remember every second that it's not our Hishtadlus. It's not the efforts that we've put in that has created the results. And this is so essential, and this is mamish exactly the point that I see in Parshas Balak, in the story of Bilaam, that it matters how we get to those results. Often HaKadosh Baruch Hu will send us that which we need because of our Hishtadlus, because of our efforts, because of the things that we've done. Often He will send it that way. But it's essential that as we're getting to that result, that we recognize, that we think about, and we contemplate, and we inculcate into ourselves that it's not us. It's not us, because the way that we get to the result, that determines who we become. If we think that it's all us, it's all koichi b'yatzim yadi, it's all of our strength, and it's all we have acquired these results. If that's our focus and that's our thinking, so we're in trouble, because that means that we are reinforcing within ourselves the negative aspect of ourselves, which is just me without Hashem. But if I do Hishtadlus, if I put in efforts, and all along I'm thinking, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing it. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing it. This is Hashem doing it. Every single thing that I'm doing is really Hashem. And Hashem could do it this way. Hashem could do it that way. There's so many different things. There are so many different ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can send it. And I want to tell you, honest truth, 100% clear for me. Why is this, you might, I don't know, there's many Baruch Hashem, many people who listen to this podcast. You might know that I've done a crowdfunding and I've created an a cappella album for the 3 weeks. And I was, Baruch Hashem, with Hashem's amazing assistance, able to raise, and with many of you, the assistance of many of you, I was able to raise $6,000 to be able to produce this album, to be able to create a video. And it's an amazing thing. How did I end up doing this? What was the idea? I thought of this idea, I must tell you, even though some of the tracks were recorded already before because I had some of this idea already, but I wasn't ready to actually do it. The beginning of last week, there was a few different possible ways that I thought Hashem would send me money for the month, for my needs, for my mashkanta, for my mortgage, and for the other things that I needed, for my business expenses. And I didn't, the things that I thought were going to be the way that Hashem would send me the money, they didn't happen. And so I said, well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what do you want me to do? And I cried. Every single month, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends me exactly what I need. Exactly what I need. I often do not know where it's going to come from. I really, really work on bitachon, and my type of livelihood affords me the opportunity to be able to indeed work on it. And you may have heard some of the stories I've told about bitachon. A really cool story 2 months ago I mentioned, I think in the bitachon podcast, maybe I mentioned it here as well. In any event, at the beginning of last week, I didn't know where the money was going to come from, and I cried out, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please help me. And the idea came to me to do this a cappella CD. And I thought, well, I just made an a cappella CD, and the way that it works with the a cappella CDs, many of them, is that I've sold the rights to my distributor in the States. And I didn't think that he would buy the rights immediately after. I just sold him one before Sphera, just 2 months ago. And I didn't know what to do. So I put it out on Facebook, right here on Facebook. I put it out, and I said, what do you think of this idea? Would you be willing to prepay? And many people responded positively and said, go for it. And indeed, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's amazing assistance, I went for it. But all along, the avodah is the work that's involved here is to understand and remember and recall and remind myself over and over again, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing it for me. This is Hashem's idea that He put in my head. Rosh Hashiva mentions, there's a pasuk that says, you shall remember Hashem your God, because He is the one who gives you the power to do strong things. He's the one who gives you the power. And the Onkelos there translates, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you the idea of which possessions to buy, of which property to invest in, of which business idea to pursue. HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts it in your head. Atzas Hashem Hisakum. Same idea. It's the idea of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we have a choice. Do we all along recognize and reinforce within ourselves the knowledge that it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who's doing it? Or do we allow ourselves to be motivated and follow the idea, the atzas hayetzer, the ideas of our yetzer hara, our evil inclination? That is the question. What is the focus? I had a conversation recently with somebody, a very influential person, a very powerful person in the Jewish community. And he was telling me, I had a whole conversation with him speaking about the idea of bitachon, b'li hishtadlus, without doing any efforts. And he said to me, I believe in Hishtadlus. I believe in Hishtadlus. I believe in putting in efforts. And I corrected him, and he agreed to me that I was correct. I corrected him and said, it's not I believe in Hishtadlus, I do Hishtadlus. And I believe in Hashem. I make efforts. I don't believe in my efforts. I believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's Hashem who's behind it all. And it's something that's a challenge, but that fine difference in thinking is all of the difference. If I believe that it's me doing it all along, then it's just, the world is just about me. I remain this selfish, small, disconnected person, a person who's disconnected from reality and disconnected from a greater reality, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if I recognize that every moment, every idea, every thought, every song, every note, every penny that comes in, it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every idea is Hashem's idea, Atzas Hashem. He's Sakum. Bilaam, he knew the truth. He knew that every idea was Hashem's idea. He knew that he wouldn't be able to say anything unless HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed him to. But he didn't care. That wasn't his intent all along. He wasn't trying to bring Hashem into his life. He was trying to defy Hashem. He was trying to do his own thing. He was trying to curse the Jewish people. And what was the result? The result was destruction. Bilaam was destroyed. And there was amazing destruction, heaven forbid, to Klal Yisrael at that time because of Bilaam. When the focus is on oneself and on the negativity and on causing destruction to others, the result of Bilaam was that he was destroyed and he caused destruction to others. Obviously, he couldn't do it without HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowing it. Obviously, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will ultimately that wins out. It's Hashem Hisakum. But what a lesson for us. What an opportunity for us. That each moment of our lives, each day of our lives, each second, everything that we do, everything that we're involved in, we can either walk with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we can either walk with Hashem and recognize that He's doing everything, or we can separate ourselves and deny that He's there, defy Him, or lose the opportunity. What a great loss it is when we don't recognize that He's the one who's doing everything. I want to bless you and I ask you to bless me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us to always be able to recognize that everything that's in our lives is from Him. All of the things, the results are His. Hashem should help us to be able to take the opportunity to be able to use that connection, use that opportunity for connection in order to become greater people and to rise up and grow in our service of Hashem. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.